We can choose the house we live in, but we can never choose our neighbors. Some people are forced to give up their dream homes simply because they could not stand their crazy neighbors. Stories of living next to awful neighbors are nothing new. Before we continue, please take some time to subscribe to Dailydose, like, and share this video with your friends. But for this story, our heroine stands out. After her rowdy and inconsiderate neighbors blocked her car, this geologist was able to get her revenge. And the next thing you know, the whole neighborhood now knew better than to mess with her. Melissa is a PhD geology student from Kansas City who moved to California for school. This is actually not the first time Melissa has dealt with annoying neighbors. She has had a lot of experience living next to different types of neighbors. Melissa was the type of person who loved the quiet and kicking back with a hot cup of tea. But since she lives close to the university, her neighborhood is pretty much occupied by a lot of college students that comes and goes. For the most part, this has not prevented her from enjoying some peace and quiet time. For the past 3 years, Melissa lived with 3 roommates in the same building. For Melissa, her current roommates were perfect. Her roommates respected each other's need for quiet and cleanliness. In fact, they could not believe how well they all were getting along, living in the same place with their different schedules and needs. A good roommate was hard to find. So as the years passed and their contracts came to an end, they always chose to renew their contracts without hesitation so that they can continue living with each other. The special dynamic they had in the house was very comfortable and reliable. They just knew they would not be able to get that with another roommate. When she heard new neighbors were coming in, she was worried when she found that they were a group of freshmen and sophomore undergrad boys. They were in a phase where college parties, socializing, and dating was vital in their lives. She did not want to live next to a frat house while she was working on her PhD, but Melissa also didn't want to move out. But Melissa found out later that her young neighbors were not as bad as she expected. They had been very considerate when it comes to the noise they were making, and when they had people over, they made sure that their guests kept out of Melissa's side of the fence and yard. Melissa acknowledged that she really did not have a problem with her young neighbors until they, unfortunately, decided to block her driveway with a huge boulder. This may seem like an issue that could easily be fixed, but Melissa had asked her neighbors specifically that they do not block their driveway when she noticed them preparing for a party. When Melissa saw that a car was blocking their driveway, she went over to the neighbors to request that their guests won't cross over to their backyard and that the car that was blocking their driveway should be moved by 7 a.m. since she had to leave by that time. She also left a note as a reminder. When Melissa woke up in the morning and was ready to start her day, she was glad to see that the car blocking them in was no longer there. However, there was a huge boulder in front of her car instead. And it was not just a random slab of stone, it was gigantic and heavy. By the looks of it, Melissa knew that she could move it on her own. She may be a tough woman, but she was also very petite. The rock was also too big that there was no way she could navigate her car around it. She was pretty much stuck. Now you may be wondering what a huge piece of rock was doing there. It actually had a purpose. The neighbors used the giant rock to protect the fence in case one of their guests was bad at parking or drunk. The neighbors knew that with their party going on, there would be a couple of cars coming in and the cramped space on their side of the yard would make parking a challenge. They did not want the fence to be damaged in all the commotion and have to pay for it, so they put the boulder near the fence to protect it. Someone from the party probably moved the rock to Melissa's side of the fence. Melissa actually thought it was a smart move until someone inconsiderately moved the boulder to her side of the fence, effectively blocking her car in. Melissa couldn't back out of the driveway. The boulder was too huge for Melissa to move, so she went over to the neighbors to ask for help to move it back to their side of the fence. Unfortunately, nobody answered her knocks on the door. Her neighbors were probably sleeping in since they had spent the whole night partying. Melissa was starting to get upset. She specifically had asked her neighbors not to block the car because she had important obligations to tend to that day. Even if a guest of theirs were the ones who moved it, they could have at least checked if things were clear since she specifically asked them to. Eventually, Melissa was able to get help putting the rock back in its proper place. She was late now, but at least she got to leave. She could not believe how inconsiderate her neighbors were. A few days passed, and it looked like her young neighbors were about to throw one of their parties again. This time, Melissa walked over to their door and asked them to make sure nothing was blocking her driveway in the morning in a more rigid tone. Melissa informed them that she had to leave early the next day for work, and that the last time they had a party, she had to deal with the boulder all by herself. She hoped it would not happen again. Melissa's neighbors held a party that was the craziest one they had so far, although the noise was tolerable. Melissa slept hoping that her neighbors would not forget their conversation earlier that day. She knew she sounded rude, but she wanted to make sure that the incident won't repeat itself. When Melissa prepared to leave for work the next morning, she woke up and found the boulder in front of her again. And this time, it seemed like things were done on purpose. The neighbors probably did not like her tone when she asked them to make sure that her car was not blocked. Melissa knew that returning the boulder back to its proper place will not solve the problem this time for her. She had a feeling that her neighbors would just keep on doing this to annoy her from this point on. She knew how mischievous and stubborn college boys can be. But her young neighbors were messing with the wrong person. Melissa was a very petite person, and they probably underestimated her and could get away by making her life inconvenient. But Melissa is a geologist. She had the tools to get rid of that giant rock that has become a nuisance in her life. Melissa knew how she was going to get rid of the boulder and at the same time send a message to her neighbors. She wanted to make sure that the neighbors would know what she was doing. Melissa wanted to clearly show that she was not the type of person who allows herself to be pushed around and that they should never underestimate her again. Melissa retrieved her professional-grade auto chipper, a powerful tool that could drill through and pulverize stone. Melissa put on her protective gloves, eye goggles, and earmuffs. She was ready for revenge. It was 7:30 in the morning, and she knew that the loud noise generated by the auto chipper would be torture to her neighbors, who were probably nursing a hangover after their crazy party the night before. Melissa cranked up the auto chipper to the highest setting and proceeded to work on the annoying boulder. The machine was extremely loud. It would be impossible for anyone to sleep through it. Melissa worked the heavy machinery like a boss. Anyone seeing the petite woman handling such a powerful tool would say that she was pretty badass. Melissa knew that the tool was going to make a noise, and she made sure that she did it within acceptable hours. She checked what time the noise ordinance stopped and smiled when she saw it ended at 7 a.m. She was free to work on the boulders and unleash the hellish noise on her neighbors. With the size and thickness of the boulder, it actually took Melissa 4 hours to finish the job. Melissa was able to successfully chip away on it until it was nothing but a pile of rubble. Melissa shared that she was able to work on the rock comfortably for 4 hours because she was listening to good music while doing it, and she was fueled with a passive-aggressive rage. Melissa could have waited until the afternoon to create such a scene and ruckus so she would not have to bother the other neighbors in the neighborhood. But she so badly wanted to get back at her next-door neighbors. When the job was done, Melissa swept the rubble away to her neighbor's side of the fence. She was so satisfied with the result that she tweeted about it. In fact, she had been tweeting about the whole commotion, so her followers were actually in the loop about what has been happening. The tweet she sent out with the picture of the pulverized boulder immediately went viral and had been shared and liked thousands of times. It seemed like a lot of people found her problem with her neighbors relatable. Melissa gave an update on Twitter after encountering 2 of her young neighbors. Neighbor update: I have made eye contact with 2 of the guys. One gave me a nod and the other looked at me with wide eyes like I'm a mad woman. I'd like to think that we have reached a mutual understanding. Her next-door neighbors probably did not see this coming. They must have felt silly after irking Melissa on purpose. They definitely brought this early morning wake-up call upon themselves. After Melissa destroyed the boulder, she went back into the house to enjoy a cup of tea. Her tea tasted sweeter with her, knowing that the next-door neighbors will have to think twice before they annoy her again. Melissa tweeted, "Update, all is quiet. Neighbors have deserted the premises. I am thoroughly enjoying a cup of tea." Melissa was clearly happy that her neighbors can take a hint. Since Melissa had been doing a live feed on her Twitter account about the whole ordeal, the story blew up when she finally got her comical and impressive form of revenge. The fact that Melissa was shameless about the way she handled things attracted more fans of the story. Melissa did not expect her story to go viral, and she could not believe all the attention she was getting. She had no clue that a lot of people would find her subtle but loud revenge hilarious. She said she only thought her geologist friends would be able to appreciate it. People from all over started to show an interest. They were curious and wanted to know why Melissa's neighbors did it in the first place. Melissa explained that her neighbors had done it because she was a horrible lady. Sadly, I am the evil lady who requests that if they have a party and people park in the driveway that they move their cars by 7 a.m. so I can get out. I'm horrid. Melissa is clearly a woman that you do not want to upset. Because of this viral story, Melissa had gained hundreds of followers. And Melissa is using the attention well by showing how cool geology is. She even became a role model for women who wanted to become scientists. The way she dished out her revenge with her knowledge and skills as a geologist and the way she looked so badass doing it definitely shows that women can do anything.